Will you be the one to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System? The one to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot, batteries not included. He helps you tackle even the toughest challenge. Will you be the first to raise the incredibly accurate Zapper and play games like Duck Hunt or action-packed Hogan's Alley and high-flying Kung Fu, each sold separately? Will you be the one to experience the Nintendo Entertainment System? Comes with Rob, Zapper, Control Deck, 2 controllers, Gyromite, and Duck Hunt.
Nintendo video games.
The Nintendo Entertainment System was released in North America on October 18th, 1985, along with 17 launch titles. Yes, 17 launch titles. Holy shit, that's a lot. Like, geez. You think any other console was released with that many launch titles? No, not at all. It's just another piece of evidence to show you how badass that system was. Among those 17 released titles was Super Mario Bros., which every kid had since it was the game prepackaged with the system in most cases. There was also Pi Pi, Duck Hunt, 10-Yard Fight, and Clu Clu Land. Now, the system didn't catch on at first. 1985 was the last year of the infamous video game crash, which lasted from 83 to 85, so people weren't going out and spending money on gaming consoles. But by 1987, the NES game sales were picking up, and in 1988, it had sold over 7 million units. And by 1990, it was in 30% of all American homes, outselling home computer systems. The NES took kids by storm in the late 80s, and gave home gaming consoles a new standard. Now, in my honest opinion, the NES is the greatest console ever conceived, and it's at the top of a lot of other people's lists as well as greatest console ever, and for a good reason. Before the NES, nobody had ever dreamed they could play their favorite arcade games in their home. But when the NES came around, it made that dream possible. Of course it was an 8-bit, lower quality, but that didn't matter. Some of these games still held up. Like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Great game. Arcade was better, but the NES did an amazing job of transporting that game onto the NES. But not only did it transport games from the arcade to your home, Nintendo also released a bunch of new, fresh games nobody had ever seen before, and they set the standard for gaming. Games like Metroid, Legend of Zelda, Castlevania, the Mega Man series. These series, they're still going on today, and there's no signs of slowing down. Now, Nintendo has its faults, but in the 80s, it was a lean, mean, game-producing machine.
Watch Zelda become a legend on your Nintendo Entertainment System.
Zelda!
Double Dragon 2, The Revenge for your Nintendo Entertainment System.
You are playing with power.
Punch-Out by Nintendo. The challenge is Metroid. The power is Nintendo.
Now, not only did the NES create some of the greatest games ever, it also produced some of the greatest music ever to appear in video games. Stuff like Wicked Child from Castlevania and Dr. Wily Stage 1-2 in Mega Man 2. And the Super Mario Bros. 3 theme. All the Super Mario Bros. Themes. Most of the music is still ringing through our heads today. I mean, come on! How badass is that? There are many, many, many great things about the NES. But if you think these games are gonna hold your hand and walk you through them, like walking through the roses, you are so wrong. These games will put hair on your chest and whip your ass into shape real quick. I promise you, you will rage quit many, many, many times. Fuck! Urgh! Fuck! Urgh! Come on, come on, come on, come on, fuck! Fuck! Now, you might be thinking, what does this kid know about 80s and the Nintendo. I'm gonna tell you, I know a whole lot. I was born in 1995, so physically it puts me out of the 80s, of course. But mentally, I was there. My dad, he listened to stuff like The Fix, Duran Duran, The Power Station, and early Metallica. My mom, she listened to Prince, Meatloaf, Whitesnake, and the Scorpions, just to name a few. Now, not only did I listen to bands from the 80s, I also watched a lot of movies and TV shows. Stuff like Back to the Future, Pretty in Pink, The Terminator, The Breakfast Club. These movies are staples of my childhood, as well as TV shows like Married with Children, stuff like that. Now, I also went over to my grandparents' house pretty much every day. And while my grandma and my mom watched soaps, I played with my uncle's toys. Now he was a real child of the 80s. I'm talking, I got to play with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mask, Transformers, G.I. Joes, the Inhumanoids, Ghostbusters, you name it. I was playing with it. And I just thought it was normal. That's what I thought. And they also had recorded these cartoons on VHS for my uncle when he was a kid, so he could rewatch them whenever he wanted. Well, guess what? I was watching them too. Side note, I also liked watching The Flash, but that show was from the 90s, so we're not on the 90s right now. But anyway, as you see, that's what I thought life was. The 80s. I thought I was living it as a kid. I remember going to elementary school and talking to kids, being like, yeah, you watch the Inhumanoids? You watch the real Ghostbusters? You watch Transformers? How about the Turtles? And they were all like, who is this kid? Is he an alien? Trust me, I got made fun of a lot. But hey, life happens. And I don't regret any of it. I'm so glad I was raised the way I was. I love all those things. Those things are nostalgic to me. The cherry on this ice cream sundae is the first gaming console I ever played. Yep, you guessed it. The NES. I remember going over to my friend's house. I had to be 6 or 7 years old. This was the first time we hung out. I walked in, and he came to the door, he said, "You want to play some video games?" I was like, video games? Scratching my head like, what the fuck's video games? I looked at him like, what's that? It's not illegal, is it? I don't want to take part in anything illegal. He's like, it's not illegal. Come on. Let's go. I'm gonna rock your world. Well, walking down the hallway, I'm kind of anxious on what video games are. Never been told about it, and it's kind of hard to believe. I had never played video games at that time in my life. Probably thinking, a 6, 7-year-old not playing video games? Were you sheltered? Nope, not sheltered. There was no mention of them. My dad doesn't really care for video games, and my mom, she didn't really play video games either, so it wasn't really a big part of me, and I didn't really hang out with other kids at that time. And even kids at school really didn't talk about video games. I remember walking into the room, looking down at the floor, seeing this gray console, going, what's that? What is that? He goes, that's the NES. On top of it, laid the first game I ever played. Paperboy. Yeah, Paperboy for the NES was the first game that I played. And that's pretty much it. I'm here now, playing video games. Because of that moment in my life, video games changed everything for me. My life revolves around video games and playing guitar, but we're not here to talk about that. You see, I know a lot about the 80s and the NES, and both of those things mean a lot to me. The main point of this video is the NES, but I know what it's like. Nostalgia's there for me. And it's amazing. And that's why, in my opinion, the NES is the greatest console ever. Now, I know I didn't really show much game footage in this. I really mainly wanted to focus on the Nintendo Entertainment System itself, and how big the impact was on people in the 80s. While I didn't live through that, I've read a bunch, and it impacted my life greatly. I played it for a really long time. And I hope you can see that, how much it means to us, and maybe you'll go out, if you've never played one, and play one. I wouldn't suggest getting the NES Classic. People are selling that for way too much money. But if you happen to come across an NES, grab a few games for it. Grab a few of the games I mentioned in this video. I promise you won't regret it. It's one of the greatest systems of all time, and has some of the greatest platforming games ever made. Literally, possibly, ever, out of any console. So, go ahead. Go pick up an NES. Play a few games. I dare you. Cheers.